If you were working at a company, do you know how talent decisions are made for promotions and projects? Is there a secret way of upping your chances for moving ahead? Well, today we talk with Kristin Lytle on the value of leadership coaching and how what she does is different than life coaching and other types of coaching. She has an impressive background and a lot to say on the topic as CEO of The Leader's Edge. Plus, she plays the violin and mandolin and is a dog lover. So stay tuned for a fun and informative interview. This podcast is brought to you by DJ Works Media with resources and ideas for you at mid-career or halftime of life. Check out our online courses where we want you to not only start, but finish. Books available in all versions and songs available for immediate download with sheet music and instrumental accompaniment tracks. Our musicals are family-friendly with great music that's memorable and inspiring. Sign up at goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter for weekly updates. Now to our episode. I'm so excited to have Kristin Lytle here with us this morning. And I'm saying this morning because I'm on the West Coast as we are recording this, and I think you're on the East Coast. So, yeah, but welcome. Thank you for joining us
Thank
today.
you so much. As mentioned in our little pre-show coordination, I've been looking forward to this very much. So I appreciate you having me on as a guest.
It's a lot of fun. It's just so much fun for me. I want to urge everyone to make sure you get all of our updates, our goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter, because I announce all of these podcasts coming up. And I'm putting out a lot of bonuses this year. And plus, I do write some articles around and I include podcasts in those as well. So, Kristin, I love to be able to have our guests introduce themselves instead of me giving this long. I've already done a tiny little bit of a intro, but I like you to introduce a little bit of your background and really what led you to your journey to take over as the CEO of the Leader's Edge. I mean, that's kind of an impressive resume. So why don't you give us a little bit of your background?
Absolutely. Thanks so much. So Kristin Lytle, I'm CEO of The Leader's Edge. I joined this organization just about 3 years ago after 20 years of working primarily in HR and talent roles in corporate America. So a lot of the times in my corporate America space, I was responsible for things like succession planning, talent management, talent acceleration, psychological assessments, those sorts of components. And in all candor, about 3 years ago, I started to get a little bit like feeling brick walls come to mind of continuing to want to convince leaders to invest in talent and match words to actions. And usually people had good intentions, but the more urgent was always more important versus the longer term investments. And I knew in the back of my mind for about 10 years, I had a role model back when I was with Kohler Company who was doing this sort of work. And I would always jokingly say for years when people would ask, what do you want to do eventually? What's your career goal? And I'd say, when I grow up, I want to be Joan. And so I'd been modeling my career path in a way that would allow me to do this sort of work. But I didn't, for my own self, if you had asked me 2 months before this started, I would have told you I needed one more role, one more assignment, one more company. I would have personally done that. But I came across Leader's Edge from a colleague of mine in another leadership program. And she said to me, I'm not sure if you ever thought about becoming an entrepreneur. If you have, I have someone who you need to meet. And that's quite honestly how it happened, where I got to know the Leader's Edge. And I just thought to myself, I'll regret this. I'll regret this for the rest of my life if I don't take the leap right now, even though I'm mildly terrified, but not enough to freeze. And so in December, I completed the purchase of the organization, became CEO, and we've been just rocking and rolling and getting ready to scale ever since. And there's definitely moments There's definitely moments, but in those moments, I do say to myself, somewhat kindly teasing, like, did you think it was going to
Mhm.
be easy?
Oh, no. Oh,
And that's why I'm
no.
like, no, I knew it wasn't going to be easy. And so then I again say to myself in those moments, well, just because something's hard doesn't mean you're doing something wrong.
Right.
And
Right.
that is something I have found for my own self that has been incredibly encouraging of reminding myself, do you think owning and becoming CEO for the first time was going to be easy or
Mhm.
probably any time?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Right.
And so that's a little bit about my career, how I got to Leader's Edge, and hopefully a little snippet of my personality style just embedded throughout.
Oh, that's great. I just love that. So you actually purchased the company as well. So that's a big step because now you have to really believe in it because there's a lot on the line there. So and
Yes, I jokingly say I feel like I'm re-earning my MBA in real life.
yes, yes, yes. Well, how fun though. I mean, what a journey at this point in your life. And I speak a lot with those at mid-career. That's what this podcast is all about. Mid-career, the halftime of life. And this is why some of these interviews are so much fun. And I speak a couple times a month too on my podcast about, many issues. And I bring my husband on because we've been together a long time. So it's just a lot that happens at this point in your life. And so you made that huge jump and huge transition, and how wonderful. Well, we're going to kind of dig into that a little bit because you focus on leadership coaching. Now, when you look up coaching, there are
Right?
so many coaches. I mean, it is just, there's life
Yes.
coaches, there's all sorts of coaches. And I don't call myself a coach because I don't do a lot of individual work now. I do it more through my online training. But that word gets so diluted. What do you do? Because leadership is so important. Self-leadership is so important. We'll get into that too. But
Mhm.
how does a leadership coach, what do you do different maybe than other types of coaches?
Sure. So we really focus in on at Leader's Edge of really business career coaching. So it's not necessarily life coaching or athletic coaching and sports coaching, obviously.
Right.
But there's a model out there, and I always like to say I don't covet much in life, but this model, I ever wish I invented this model because it's beautiful in its simplicity. But if you think about like almost like a math equation, a very simple math equation of you have your potential
Mm-hmm.
minus the interference you come across
Mm-hmm.
equals your overall performance.
Mm.
Your potential minus interference. And I like to say interference can be internal,
Mm-hmm.
meaning being overly harsh on yourself, overly self-critical, or it
Mm-hmm.
could be external, like not managing your stakeholders appropriately. And what we do as leadership coaches is we help our clients identify forms of interference and shrink it as much as possible so they are no longer leaving their potential on the table.
I love that. And I think there are so many, especially women, that face that internal interference, not feeling good enough, not feeling like, okay, am I too old? Especially if you're in any sort of entertainment field or the arts and you feel like, okay, is anybody going to listen? Is anybody going to even, pay attention anymore? But we see a lot that have broken through. I think of Meryl Streep and all of those are just,
Yes.
you have to get beyond that feeling like that imposter. I mean, there's so much out there about that too, but that's a big deal with, I would think with the internal, but also the, just the education that you need, what's holding you back. There's a lot of
Right.
things
Right.
there.
Absolutely. And so part of my corporate career, as mentioned, was succession planning. And
Mm-hmm.
I jokingly say my claim to fame is that over the course of my career, I facilitated something north of 700 individual succession planning meetings with C-suite executives.
Wow.
And so when you do something 700 plus times, you notice patterns, right?
Right. Right.
And there's a bit of, we like to think the story of that person who's ascending in their career is just super talented and full of potential. I can tell you and anyone in your audience that's listening to this, if you are seeing someone ascend quickly in their career, they are getting help. I assure you that, because I was in the room where those decisions were made and reviewed on a regular basis.
Wow.
And they might not recognize it as help because maybe they won the boss lottery.
Mm-hmm.
That's not everybody. But more often, those people are asking for development and training. They are asking for coaches. And so often we look and we're like, gosh, if I was smarter, or if I was more politically savvy, or if I was this, then I would be able to ascend in my career like this other person. So therefore, I think less of myself, versus really being honest that they probably have some form of help or assistance in some way, shape, or form.
Great advice. Great advice. And I can see how, you have had those influence in your life. I mean, even we had a little bit of a issue with sound right before we got on. And, I've known so many years, because I've dealt with tech for so long, there's ways around it. You'd get around it. And you did. You were able to get around it. We got back online and here we are. So, without a glitch, but calmly, not just getting ruffled, saying there has to be a solution, period.
Absolutely.
There has to be a solution. So that's a real quality of experience, because and a lot of people discount their own experience that includes that.
Exactly.
Because they have been in a field for so long, they discount that and how important that is. That's one of those little soft skills too, and that carry you through with experience, that you have to overcome enough of these obstacles to be able to be calm through them. When you have, I've been on a stage, and a lot of stuff happens. But go ahead.
I couldn't agree more. There's a model I've created where I sometimes will talk about how I don't like about how we talk about confidence in like leadership industry and publications and such, because it's all one thing. Where what I like to think about confidence in two veins of, and I love alliteration, it helps things to be able to recall, but I call it task versus trait. And our task confidence is going to wax and wane. If we're ever doing something new, we're going to not feel as confident. And that's okay. If anything, you don't want to feel too confident if you've not done it before. That's actually a different phenomenon in psychology. Yeah. But what we can have faith in is our traits of my traits from my experience. Right. I have had tech problems before, and I know how to get through it. And I have a bevy of cords on the side to make sure I always have a plan B. So I'm going to trust the fact I have a plan B. Right. For my tech, and it'll work out. But to me, we often look at our confidence with a task and take that as confidence writ large, versus saying, yeah, I am a little nervous about this thing for the first time because I've never done this thing. But I trust I got curiosity. I trust I have stick-to-itiveness. I trust I won't get ruffled, whatever the case might be. Right. And that will help carry me through.
And I love that you said, too, because there are so many philosophies out there. And, when you say, well, you just need to go for it. You don't need a plan B. You just need to go for it. Huh. Hey, when you're living in your car and you can't pay your bills, you better have a plan B. You decide, so there has to be, some sort of logic, and God's given us a brain, think through a lot of those situations. And again, I've been in a lot of situations to where you just keep trying until it works, and keep on the perseverance of it. I mean, it's just really amazing on that. And when you talked about entrepreneurship with the Leader's Edge, do you deal with a lot of entrepreneurs, or is it entrepreneurial based? How did that sort of equation come in there?
So the original question from my friend had been, was I interested in becoming one? Because a lot of the women that we work with are often navigating mid to large size organizations. Yeah. And that in our signature programs, we do work with both men and women for executive coaching as well as team building or team dynamic sort of events. But with our signature programs, we are focusing a lot on women because, let's face it, our experiences are different than that of men. what we're rewarded for, what we're recognized for, what we're held accountable to is often a bit different. And therefore, we've developed different habits. And so it's not so much men are from Mars and women are from Venus necessarily, but we also recognize that you and I are going to be looked at differently if we say no to some of those office housekeeping things. Like if we say, no, I don't want to take the notes or bring the coffee or whatever the case might be, that's going to be looked at very differently than one of our male colleagues were to say something like that. So we really focus in on with women in our signature programs and then men and women in our executive coaching. But how do you navigate an organization as a senior leader?
Interesting. Yeah, that's we'll talk about like a little bit of that self-leadership too, how important that is, because a lot of people are on their own. I'm on my own a lot, even though I work with people, but I'm still, it's me and my computer and, producing and marketing and all of that. And I'm working now with my own assistants. So, but what are some common mistakes that you see kind of through it could be with self-leaders, it can be with entrepreneurs, it can be with men and women, but what are some of those mistakes? Is it a mindset or is it a task that we often do?
I would say it starts with one very like a term, but is assuming. That's honestly the most common mistake is assuming we know what someone else thinks of us, assuming we know if they want our product or service or not, assuming we know what's the most important thing to a person or that they're just bored, maybe they're focused and concentrating. So it's all these things where we tend to assume we know instead of asking. And that is probably what gets more leaders into what I call, I know your book is Stop Sparkly. I call it the spin effect. Like if you're spinning and that's what's often what gets us into those things where we waste a lot of mental calories spinning on assuming. And I have a question I like to ask. So I do some coaching in addition to leading the business because I like to stay very close to what people are experiencing in the workforce. And one of the questions I like to ask when they say, well, I just know so-and-so thinks, I go, is that a fact or is that a feeling?
Yeah.
And so how do you know? Tell me how you know for certain, because what if you're wrong with this assumption? So is this idea and it's simply the skill set needed is this ability to pause and recognizing I might be taking a leap here on something that it might not be accurate.
Yeah. You know what? I'm like laughing inside because you're really describing a marriage.
Oh, yeah.
Greg and I, we've been married a lot of years. I mean, over 40 actually. So, but some of our beginning conversations were about expectations. It's like, I just assumed,
right.
Doesn't work. It just, and after this many years, you've just learned. It's taken a long time sometimes to get that through your head because you still go back to the same habits. But yeah, it's those expectations, but it's the leadership with a company or with if you're an entrepreneur, solopreneur, or if you have assistants, still communication is so important. And I love it at that, asking questions. My husband's a lot better than I am at about asking the way you ask questions. I think I come across a little harsher maybe because I have my empathy level is down from his, but he has a good way of asking those questions. So sometimes I ask him, how should I ask this? So there again, he's one of my greatest sounding boards on things because he's had experience corporate and stuff. I've been on my own with entrepreneurial type of work so many years. Yeah. So, I think that was great advice. Great advice.
And I think I agree with you. So I've been married to my husband, Rich, we're just a few weeks shy of 19 years. So we too have learned a bit over the years and sometimes not as quick as one might think for two people who are reasonably smart. But
that can get in the way.
But to that point of like, So I am very much so a talent person. My degrees are marketing, international business, French with my MBA in finance. So I'm very much so that side of the brain. My husband by trade was a packaging engineer and works in supply chain. So I bring that up to say, when I want someone to really challenge my thinking, all I do is share with him.
Yes.
Because he'll look at it from a completely different angle than what I would. I was like, no, that's not the question. Like, my question is this. I'm like, but interesting, you had that take on it. That would have never occurred to me.
Yeah.
So I have my moments where I make sure I'm ready to hear it. That's the 19 years of learning.
Yes.
But I do try to make sure that I know I make assumptions in my own head that I don't even realize I'm making. And so I have to find people who can make me feel a little uncomfortable that my genius idea could be misinterpreted by someone or not thought of as genius at all.
Right.
And I'm only hurting myself if I proceed without, challenging myself with some of those trusted advisors.
And that's great because, it's a safe relationship. And I mean, the morning coffees, cappuccinos, I'm very spoiled, that I have with my husband is some of our most important times because it's again, that sounding board. And, you don't need this huge group of people around. I have, different relationships there too, but it's very, very important to have that. It's great advice. Yeah, because we, the voice in our head can tell us different things.
Right. Or we might have what's known as like that curse of knowledge, right? Where it's hard to not know what we know, and we might be skipping steps in how we're communicating something as well. So we might be on the right track, but not explaining it very well because it's obvious because we're inside our head.
Yep. And I'm finding now, having adult kids, they'll definitely tell you to kind of, because they're adults now. I have three sons. And so, they will, definitely, Mom, it's very stern. And they're in all different fields. So it's fascinating how you can see things, but yet, you're watching the journey, and if they're ready to listen, that sort of thing too. But it's all of this. All of this relates to a lot of areas of life, and I just love the subject because it's really on that self leadership too. Let's get to that. What are some of the things that you can do as a self leader? Because any leadership position, they still need to be a self leader like you. You still have a lot of self leadership. So, what are some of maybe your habits, or what if you're unfulfilled in your career? What do you do? What are some of those things?
Well, I think there's like two tracks of the self-leadership. I think there's very much like that day-to-day and how am I structuring my day or my time, or who am I interacting with? Do I feel depleted at the end of every day? Or am I getting kind of wound up about things that maybe are important or not important? And it's just starting to notice, and this builds to that longer term component, but there is something to just recognizing, am I starting to kind of get a little bit agitated? And what are some signs and signals that I tend to show when that is the case? For me personally, I can tell you it's when I'm driving in the car and I start shouting with the windows up to the car in front of me. The right one is the accelerator. When I do that, I'm like, oh, something else is going on with work or my life. That's kind of getting me amped up. And that's like that literally for me, I used to laugh about it, but it's so true. When I'm like, I don't have a second to spare because, and I start shouting, friendly-ish. They never hear me, but that's what's going on in my head. I know something else. So it's that first noticing before it gets too much off the rails. But as far as this whole like feeling unfulfilled, I would say the number one thing I would say is to remind people, because I work with a lot of talent at this phase. In fact, I created this roadmap from before my friend who had the opportunity to meet the Leader's Edge. I was like, well, I don't want to do another corporate job. I don't know what I want to do. And if it's feeling myself kind of stuck. And so I built out this whole roadmap because I couldn't find a great resource. So I started to build one because I had friends that coming to me. All that to say, one of the first things I tell people is, you didn't get here in a day. you're probably not getting out of here in a day.
Yes.
And I think it sounds so simplistic, but I think when someone finally articulates it for themselves, they just want to accelerate right past that feeling of discomfort of I'm not being satisfied. I want to find the next thing now. And it's just that slow down for a second, because you didn't get into this feeling of unfulfilled in one singular day. You're not getting back out of it in one singular day. And you need to start to learn to stop and listen to yourself as well at this point, because you probably had been ignoring feelings for quite some time of being dissatisfied on a regular basis. You either distracted yourself or disassociated from it, because otherwise that's probably how you got here. So the first step is to start to listen. What do I find interesting? What parts of my job do I like, or did I used to like that I don't anymore? What's going on? And kind of slow down the clock for yourself.
Wow. Great advice. It's we don't stop and listen. We have such a fast-paced world, and it's hard to take that time. And it depends on what time of life you're in, but it doesn't really matter what time of life you're in. There's going to be something new. Whether you're a young mom, whether you are, you're balancing work and, an elderly parent, or whether you're balancing relationships in your life. It doesn't matter. There are things, but it's so hard to stop, isn't it?
Well, it's hard to stop. But one thing I have learned over time, and trust me, I was the anti spokesperson, we'll say, for this, is that your body will also tell you.
Oh, yes.
You're like, if you feel headaches or certain aches or things are bothering you, or like your stomach is like churning at the end of each, like listen to your body. And again, I was the person where I was like, ice it, Advil, ignore. That's kind of my motto in life. And we have to, because our body's telling us that something's incongruent with how we're spending our time and our energy. And we should really pay attention when those start to happen, so that they don't become overly impactful with long-term illness or impacts to our life and our well-being. I like to say you're going to be in your body a heck of a lot longer than any one job. Be careful about burning it out for such a short-term thing as a role.
That's such good advice. Again, getting your sleep, getting your, time away, getting time to yourself, clearing your head, doing a lot of those eating habits, working out, all of those habits are just very, very important. I've got a lot of podcasts on those too, and guests on them, or I speak on those too, how important that is, because you've really that's part of, a full life, to pay attention to those things. So, right. You, on a personal note, I was very interested to get to this, because as relaxation, you like to play the violin and mandolin, which is dear to my heart, because I had one of my grandmothers. She's the one that played in Carnegie Hall. She played violin and mandolin, and at 16, and graduated from the New York Conservatory of Music at that time, which was very, very unusual for a woman. But how fun. Mandolin, that is not a real common instrument to play. And to me, that's just kind of fun that you would go there for relaxation. And what was that all about?
So I grew up playing violin moderately competitively. We'll say private lessons every week, group lessons every Saturday. I was in Milwaukee Youth Symphony Orchestra, did all the competitions, whatnot, developed horrific stage fright, debilitating.
Oh, interesting.
Right. They call about shaky bow. I have like jackhammer bow. But weirdly enough, after 20 years, I started feeling this pull towards it. So I went back, and it was very humbling, but I eventually got back to moderately decent enough. And my husband plays guitar, and I was like, man, I wish, gosh, it's so unfair. If my finger is a millimeter off with violin, everyone can hear it. And you have this frets, and you have this thing like a capo. That's cheating. And so, long story short, I was just looking into instruments, and I realized the mandolin was the same stringing as a violin. I'm like, oh, I can figure this out.
Right.
And then what happened is I shared with a few friends, and it turns out a buddy of mine was starting a bit of a music group, and they wanted to cover Maggie May.
Oh,
So I joined them for Maggie May, and I refused to leave ever since. And that was 3 years ago.
that's so cool. See, I was
They're
my
stuck
sister's.
with me now.
I've got a sister that was professional. She is still a professional violinist. I was her free accompanist growing up. And so I love the literature. But I understand my mom did not put me on violin because my sister was the one who would match the octaves. And we had this old Hammond B3 organ. She would match the octaves. Well, I just play them all. I just play all the notes. It didn't matter where. So I still play all the notes. But yeah, it was, it was the ear. And it's such discipline. She started young. You've got to start young. And it's a tough instrument, that violin. So good for you. How fun, though. And it's probably just such a release now, such a, relaxation, I would think, at this point in your life.
Yes. Because, honestly, I'm not good enough that I can think about anything else.
Yeah.
Other than the notes I'm playing. So it is a bit of a release from all other things in life.
Yeah,
and you're stay so focused.
Yeah, and you're with a group. Yeah, it's a great thing to be
we
able
play
to
in my buddy's basement. We cover songs from the 70s and oddly enough, the 90s. We skipped the 80s altogether. But
wow, isn't that fun? Well,
and it's just literally fun talking about music, trying out different things. But it's this interesting learning how to play with other people listening.
Yeah,
that's different. I think I've brought into my leadership as well in a different way than I ever had before.
Yeah, it's a very good principle, definitely. So how fun. I mean, I was just thinking about that because I will sit at my Blutner Grand in the evening, even though I still play professionally. I still work with Disney and I still do some, definitely professional work. But, it's so relaxing now just to sit, do some sight reading or just to sit and play. Yes. I'm not really just practicing all of these to have to do concert work. I'm memorizing some new things. It's good for the head, good for the brain, and it's a total diversion. So, and I encourage people, if you've played before, play again. There's so many, I have programs. There's a lot of programs out there. You can do that. So great. You're also, we can get back to the music. We can always talk about music. I could talk forever about music. I love it. But you're co-chair. This caught my eye too. Co-chair of Women Against MS. Now there must be a reason that you're involved with that because that's a very specific sort of illness and sort of journey that people make. Why are you involved with that, and what got your interest in that?
So my father has advanced MS and had been diagnosed many, many years ago and has, continuing to do what he can. And of course, with all the medical treatments and advances and such. But my father had been an oral surgeon and in college had been like a college athlete, always been very athletic. And he worked very, very hard. And just to see the impact on him, on his body, on the pursuits, and knowing that, a few of my siblings and I, we have, unfortunately, some autoimmune. So I'm a celiac, I'm a gluten-free gal. And knowing I did what I tend to do is I dug into the research. I did a lot of reading about connections and those sorts of things. And so what I love about the MS Society is that not only are they involved with research, but that they're also involved with helping those who have the disease navigate through life.
Yeah.
How to find a way to get the assistance or the grab bars or perhaps a ramp within your home if that's what you need. And knowing that they're not just, the research is critically important, don't get me wrong. And yay research. Like Barbie, like yay science.
Yes.
Or yay space. That's what she says. Yay space.
Yay space.
Like yay research. But that being said, helping people who've been diagnosed navigate is very near and dear to my heart.
Wow. Well, there has to be some reason as we're involved with some of these organizations. Usually there's some reason that perks our interest, and especially that you are a co-chair of the Women Against MS. So, and that it's helped you probably in some of your own journey of, your medical research. All of a sudden when you're into it and you need to be gluten-free and, all the other issues that you're dealing with, it helps to put some sort of a help with there for
and it's funny how things can link together too in life. So I'd been reading some books separately about work stress, burnout, et cetera. That led me down a path, as it always does, right? And I came across some information in one of these books saying that 100 years ago, the diagnosis rate for MS and this book had nothing, was not necessarily on MS, but it was meant to be an illustrative example.
Mm-hmm.
The diagnosis rate 100 years ago in the US and Canada was 50-50 by gender.
Oh, interesting.
Today it's 80-20.
Wow.
And so there's not really a perfect answer, but one of the theories and strong theories is that has to do with, in particular, women navigating careers, not being able to put down anything else. Like, you're still often, if you're a parent, you're still a full-time parent, you're still running a household, you're still doing all these other things, plus the career.
Right.
And, not everyone's had the ability, and people are more mobile now. So we're not necessarily near large family to help. So it's often falling on the shoulder of these women because genes don't change that rapidly over the course of 1 year. Men drink the same water and breathe the same air as women.
Right.
So there's got to be something else going on. And that is also why I'm so passionate about with the women I coach, take stress seriously.
Wow. Yes. And this is why giving yourself permission, entrepreneurs, you need to be listening. If you are a solopreneur, entrepreneur, listen to that body. And I can work long and hard. I used to be able to work longer and harder. And as we gradually, add on the years too, I find I need my sleep more. I need to get outside more. Stuff right in front of this computer. I start early in the mornings, but I have to get outside. I've got to get out. That's why we've got fruit trees. I'm going to be out trimming. I'm going to be out doing something totally different for 10 minutes.
Yes.
Just listen to the body. Listen to the stress that take a bath. Just those sort of things. Great advice. Yeah.
They're not indulgences. These are things that are safeguarding your health.
Yes.
In order to be able to maintain, keep doing what it is you love to do.
Yes.
And that I always like to say, when it comes to career planning for anyone, I often say, stop thinking about what job you want. It's all about giving future you options.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so is the health side of things. If you are able to keep yourself healthy, you have options in the future that you wouldn't have if you burn yourself out.
Totally. And I want to work until my boys put me in the home. I just really, I love what I do. So that's important. And it's hard to make yourself kind of stop because you think, I could just still get a little more done. I could do this and this, but when the eyes start crossing and you're just, you're thinking, okay, I'm overdoing. It's really, really important. When you have home offices too, for anybody that has home offices, boy, isn't that hard to shut it off. So it's a challenge. So great. Yeah, great.
I like to remind myself I'm not better than the science. I'm not that good that I can outprove all the data and all the studies on this. So come on, science and most other things. How about this too?
Yeah. Well, if everyone's listening to this and they've gotten all of this amazing, wise advice, they're thinking, wow, Kristin just got so much to say and I just enjoyed this. What is one thing that you feel like people can start now, or one word of advice just to say, this is what you can do right now? I mean, besides start paying attention to your body and yourself and, there's so many things. But with this, your leadership, whether it's self-leadership or what is just a word? I mean, it could be a couple things, but I just want to leave people with just saying, I can apply this today.
Know your differentiated skills. Because if you know what you're what you have a unique gift at, that can help bolster confidence. It can also help you determine where you want to focus your time and energy so that you get more energy back out of it versus feeling depleted. But it's so hard to read the ingredient label when you're inside the package.
Oh, yes.
We think our skills that we're really good at are not that big of a deal because they come semi-naturally to us or we enjoy working on them. And so therefore we have honed them. And so sometimes it's asking friends and family, what do I do that's different than others? And a question I found in a book a little while back by Jenny Blake is, I think she calls it the $1,000 question. You ask friends, families, colleagues is appropriate. If I charge you $1,000 for a service, like the money's already in my account, essentially. There's a little bit of my language in here too, but what service could I provide that would make you feel like it was a good use of those funds? And write it down what people say. Because if there's something where you were like a $1,000 consultant for them, they're going to tell you what they think you bring that's different, and write it down and look for patterns.
Wow.
So knowing your skill set, or just asking people outright if it's a $1,000 question or not, can help in so many ways, because it helps you to retain that confidence in your traits as well as double down on what you're great at.
Great advice. Wow. And boy, I talk about this a lot in Hero Mountain Summit. I've got it's like a mentorship course of 5 months, but the core common denominator, just figuring out, what you are unique, find your uniqueness. And because there's a lot of clones, people will just try to copy somebody else. It doesn't work. So, you got a lot of,
What's that phrase? I forget who said it, but like, be yourself, everybody else is taken.
Yes, be yourself. Exactly. And it's amazing. I love people watching. It's amazing. Like, everybody's so different.
Yes.
How can there be this many people in the world, have this many people, you might look.
And we need what you bring.
Yes, we really do
that in this world. So don't hide it.
Yeah.
Don't play it down.
Yeah. That's that confidence, the assured, it's very, and that comes through just stopping, like you said earlier. Stop, take a breath.
Are you shouting at the car in front of you? The right one's the accelerator.
Yep.
That's a sign you might need to slow down.
That's great. I love that. The right one's the accelerator. And we talk to ourselves a lot, don't we, in the car, especially when there's traffic. Well, this has just been such a pleasure. How do people, I will put all of the show notes, by the way, in all of these podcasts. You will get all of your links, your show notes with how to reach Kristin. So how do people find you, and who do you work with, and all of that with your leadership, with your Leader's Edge? Yes.
Great. So we have an absolutely wonderful website that has a less than wonderful URL. So I'm going to say it slowly.
Okay.
But it is the-leaders-edge.com. Essentially, it's the Leader's Edge with dashes between each word.
Good.
And we are also very findable on LinkedIn, and we are making sure that we're really sharing our thought leadership on LinkedIn. I post articles on a semi-regular basis with what my team likes to call Lytleisms.
That's fun. I like
little
that.
Phrases I have found over time that help encapsulate an idea, just for those if you're needing a little, change in perspective on how to consider something. And so we are definitely on LinkedIn with the Leader's Edge with the dashes. And then you can find me at Kristin Lytle, Lytle on LinkedIn as well.
Cool. Perfect. Well, thank you for that information, and that will be in our show notes, and you'll be able to get to there through your websites and all of that. So that's a great thing. And with articles on LinkedIn is a great place too, to be able to really check out some of the thought leadership that you provide and all of that. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure, and I love talking about the personal. Well, and you like dogs. Okay, so that was another thing that you like.
Yes.
So, that's actually important. They become kind of a part of your family, don't they? Those little dogs.
Mine is currently locked not locked, but he's locked out of my office with a Kong.
Yes. I gave mine the doggy
before this started. So he's like, ooh, is it my birthday?
Yeah, I know. I put mine in our main house with the doggy bone. That's always a big thing. So
yeah. He's like, midday.
Yeah. Well, and Well, thank you so much, Kristin. This has been an absolute pleasure. Again, for everyone, make sure you're getting our updates on goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. We have a lot of information, Hero Mountain Summit. I've got multiple websites too. You can always but you can get all those links through the podcast, through the newsletter, Deborah Johnson speaker as well, and DJ Work. Everybody loves music. DJ Works music. Got a lot of music out there too. But everybody loves that. Isn't that something? So thank you again for joining me, Kristin. This has been an absolute delight, and I will look forward to being back again next time with everyone. And hopefully you're following and listening, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye for now.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for joining us. It is because of our wonderful listeners like you that we keep going strong week after week. We'd love it if you'd share and follow us to not miss a single show and even write a review. You can also find all of our articles, products, and links at womenathalftime.com.